This episode of Grounded in Maine is sponsored by ESG Review. ESG Review magazine is published quarterly in February, May, August, and November, and is available for free in print and digital formats. ESG Review is devoted to environmental, social, and governance strategies, technologies, and investments. ESGreview.net is updated every Wednesday with 8 new stories and is home to feature articles, news items, and more. Visit esgreview.net to stay informed and help us spark the collaboration and awareness needed to develop sustainable economies and communities around the world.
There's a place where there's no trouble, no more pain, no more struggle.
Grounded in Maine podcast is an open conversation about how we show up for the world. I started this podcast out of a desire to learn new ways to be sustainable because the word sustainability is big. It can be overwhelming, and I just wanted to learn, different ways to try to be part of the solution and not feel like it's too late. So I am talking to people who are doing different things and learning so much. I hope that you are too.
Hi there. Thank you so much for listening to Grounded in Maine today. My name is Amy Fagan. My guest today is Kathy Jentz, and if you haven't heard of her, and I honestly hadn't heard of her, I'm surprised that I hadn't heard of her. But she's on my radar now, and I am not going to forget about this. Kathy's a big deal actually in the gardening world, and I am so thrilled that I got the chance to talk to her. So Kathy is a publisher, an author, an editor. She's a podcaster. Like, she does all these things. She actually has a magazine that she puts out quarterly. Oh, wait, maybe it's monthly. Oh my gosh. And she does a blog, and she has a weekly podcast, and like all these things. She is all over the place with gardening. And she also is the president of several gardening clubs. I don't know how she does it. Anyway, she's a big deal in the gardening world, and I'm so thrilled that I had the chance to pick her brain and talk to her a little bit. So she's going to talk to us about gardening, of course, but she has a couple of specialties, and one of them is urban gardening, which I love, and the other is ground cover, which I never thought about, but is a game-changing idea, and she just wrote a book about it. And so we're going to talk about that, of course. So anyway, Kathy, big deal. So cool. And she's awesome. So I hope you enjoy this episode. If you love this podcast, please feel free to share it, obviously, with somebody that you think would enjoy it. Feel free to rate or review wherever you're listening. That just helps to get it in front of different ears or eyes. Remember that it is on YouTube as well if you're a YouTube watcher. There's less on it because I don't do the intro and stuff because I am not a techie person, if you know me at all. It's just the interview. All the show notes are attached to the podcast. So definitely check that out. You're going to find all of Kathy's links because she's got lots of links. She's on all the social medias too, which is crazy. I do not know how. She must have a huge team. My goodness. But so definitely check that stuff out. Share it with somebody. I mean, she manages the gardening area of the entire middle America. So the mid-Atlantic, I should say. She's in Maryland, so the mid-Atlantic region, and also apparently, from what she was saying, the same gardening zone is Oregon, Washington, I think. So so the same gardening plans and ideas will work in Washington, Oregon as well, I believe. Don't quote me. I'm not her. But that's my understanding. So, but if you really don't like the podcast, please let me know, because I would love to make sure to provide some value to you. If you would like to be a guest on this podcast, please let me know. Oh my gosh, I love to chat with people, obviously. There is a guest form located just about everywhere I am located, and you can just fill that out, add a picture, some things that you want to talk about, and we'll set that up. No problem at all. But anyway, thank you so much for listening. I'm thrilled to have you. I'm thrilled to have Kathy. Oh my gosh. So please enjoy Kathy Jentz. Today, my guest is Kathy Jentz, and if you don't know Kathy, you probably should. There's Kathy. Hi, Kathy. Kathy Jentz is an award-winning. She's an award-winning author, publisher, editor, podcaster. What else am I missing? So you have a magazine, Washington Gardener magazine, Garden DC podcast, Groundcover Revolution book, also an urban gardening book. Is it called Urban Gardening?
It's called The Urban Garden, and
Okay.
101 Ways to Grow Food and Beauty in the City. So it's got one of those long subtitles.
Fantastic.
That a lot of books have those today.
Yeah. And you are like, you're a big deal. And you're in Maryland. So, thank you so much for coming on. I remember we hooked up a few months ago. Oh my gosh. And I totally dropped the ball. So I apologize about that, but we're here today, and that's what matters.
Yes. Yeah. And it was a crazy busy summer too. So this is good. And I was going to say that the garden is starting to wind down, but it never does here. It's always more to do. This is the middle of harvest season and seed collecting time and everything else in the world. And
then the cleanup and planting do you do cover crops for winter crops?
Yeah, so I'll do some cover crops, and I have a community garden plot across the street. It's just a small vegetable garden, like a 10 by 20. And what I don't cover with cover crops, I'll cover with a thick layer of straw, and some things I leave over winter. So there's the perennials like asparagus, I just chop that back when it starts to die back, and the strawberries, of course, and the blackberries. And then other things I have like kale and arugula that I'll winter over as long as possible. Some winters it'll come straight through. Like last winter, I was still able to get radishes and carrots the next spring from what I did in October.
Radishes?
Yep. And it's amazing. So I had daikon radishes, a cover crop actually of daikon radishes in one bed. Ooh. And I was like pulling those out, and I was like, oh, you could actually eat some of these. And I was, planting them as a cover crop, but no, it was such a mild winter last year. I'm told this year is going to be a bad, what is it called? El Nino.
Oh, okay.
I think it's El Nino pattern. So it's going to be a bad winter. So we'll see how long things last.
That's amazing. And I didn't know about arugula too. Arugula will overwinter, at least for a while.
Yeah, usually we'll throw a cover cloth over it, and so I can normally get it through December. And then it depends on how bad January is. Like, do we have a lot of ice? Do we have a lot of snow sitting on top, or is it a pretty mild January? By February, everything is usually, I call it wet spinach. You know what I'm talking about? Like,
oh yeah,
like everything just laying on the ground, looking horrible. And then that's the point where you're like, okay, I don't even need to go over the plot. I can skip it for 4 to 6 weeks. I just know that, right. We'll just restart everything in March.
Yeah. You just rest now.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Amazing. That's so cool. And my kale comes back every year. Which is cool. And I don't do anything. It just it just does it. It's cool. I love it. And it's beautiful. I love it's like two-tone sort of. It's like purpley with a greenish.
Yeah, that's a nice one. I like the purpley kale with the kind of red veining. It's pretty. I'm not a big kale eater, I must say. I grow it, but I give a lot away.
Yeah. I did for a while. I ate a lot for a long time. Now I'm big into arugula
Mm-hmm.
and the spinach greens, like the mustard
Yep.
greens.
Yep.
Mustard
Spinach
greens.
and arugula so much better than kale. I don't know. Kale had a really good PR person for a while, but we were all tricked.
Bamboozled. Yeah. Uh, but so you were saying, Kathy, that your specialty is urban gardening, which is awesome. I love urban gardening, and because of course you live in the city in Maryland.
So I'm right on the Washington D.C. Silver Spring, Maryland border. So I'm a block, like as the crow flies, a block from the city edge of Washington D.C. And Silver Spring, Maryland is pretty older suburb, like one of those train suburbs. And I'm between
Okay.
two metro stations, two subway stations, and next to a community college. So basically high-rise apartments on one side of me, Victorian homes from the 1880s to 1920s on the other side of me. So
Awesome.
I'm the little tiny neighborhood in between those two big differences. But it's always fun.
You're right on the line. You're walking the line. Okay.
Yeah.
That's very well. I mean, best of both worlds, right?
Hmm.
Modern and old.
Yeah.
And so, why is urban gardening such a passion project for you?
Yeah, I think I remember going to, I don't know if you've ever been to a Simplicity Circle type meeting back maybe like 10 or 15 years ago, and there was a documentary shown on how Cuba survived the oil crisis. Like they basically had nothing. And
Oh,
how they were able to feed themselves in the city and grow. And I realized, oh, that's what I've been like working at this whole time. And I just didn't have words to describe it until watching this documentary of this really intensive urban food farming in the city and how people cooperated with each other because they had to. It was like, it wasn't, romanticized, is because they had to eat and this is what they had available. And because every time I would walk by, a construction lot that just sat for 3 years and there would be one tomato plant coming out of it, I'd be like, oh, do you know what could be done with this space and how much can grow there? And so I was always one of those people pushing other people to grow something and like
mm-hmm.
have anything but turf grass lawn. I was like, well, you could have a turf grass lawn, or you could have a bunch of blueberry bushes right here. And if you don't eat them, the wildlife will. So that's always been like a little bit of a passion for me. And so as a little kid, my parents had a community garden and I did not love it, I must say. It was work because we had to weed and haul water to it.
Yep.
And hauling water, as many gardeners know and others know, that's one of the worst chores, especially in the middle of summer when the watering is needed to be done the most. But I would go visit my grandparents in Germany, in Bavaria, and they had a 99-year allotment. So same thing as our community gardens, but usually a little bit bigger, big enough that you could have a little shed and a barbecue and a house on it. Whereas most community gardens here, you can barely like fit in your plot. So
Right, right.
they they actually had room for fruit trees and trees, and they had a 99-year lease. So you were gardening like you had a 99-year lease with with fruit trees and a cistern and everything. And I just loved playing in that garden. So that's probably where that got sparked on that side. And that was very much city living, where you were in an apartment during the
Mm-hmm.
week and you spent almost all your weekend at your
Garden.
allotment
Yeah,
garden. Hmm.
that's great. Oh gosh, that's such a cool. I just love that. I love that sort of mindset. Like you can work, 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 and then you're getting away from it and just focusing on growing things and focusing on, I don't know, just being away and doing something completely different. And yeah, I love that whole idea. I mean, my garden is right next door, but I like the idea of getting away to do that and just being there to focus on it and not having the distractions of life.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yep.
yeah, that's such a 99-year lease, 99-year community. What did you call that?
So they're called allotment gardens. They have them in Britain and France and Germany. Different countries will have them in Europe, but you're renting it, but it's a lease is like so cheap, like $1 a year or something like that. And you're signing for 99 years with the expectation that you're going to be in it for a long time. It's not like America where we,
You
move
have
every
to
2 or
renew
3
it,
years.
yeah. Or you have to renew it every year, and
or that you own it. Like
right.
there's the two systems here. You either own it or I'm renewing my community garden through our county park system. So every winter we have to say whether we want to re-up on it and then pay our fee for the next year. And then otherwise it goes back into the pool of available lots for anybody.
Got it. Okay. That's really cool. And so your grandparents could you were saying they could put like fruit trees and stuff and grow things that will take a long time to grow. That's great.
Yeah, I remember they had gooseberries and other, strawberry patch and things like that, and a very old herb garden. So I'm going to introduce you to somebody. He was crawling under me. This is Kimba.
Hey, Kimba.
He's just 1
he's
year old.
enormous.
Yeah, he's a big boy. He got to be a very big boy. 1 year ago, he was this little kitten like this size in the palm of my hand. And now he's like this big bruiser. So,
that's a big neck.
Yep. He's like, this is my weightlifting.
Dude. Kimba, you're a big dude.
He has a big brother. I don't think he'll come along here. Santino is a Maine Coon. Not related, just adopted brother. But yeah, for a tabby cat, a mixed Siamese tabby, he is much bigger than he should be. I always said as a kitten, he must have done weightlifting because all of a sudden he got this muscled neck and muscled body. And I'm like, are you down here in the kitchen pushing weights all night? Like, what is going on?
Oh my gosh.
Could not figure it out. And his sister was so tiny in comparison to him. So we'll see if his sister comes along.
They're so funny. Oh my gosh. I know my sister lives in Cincinnati, and they live across from a community gardens, and I know somebody we visited there, and somebody has they had okra growing, and I've never seen okra growing before, and it was this tall plant, and it was so cool looking, and I didn't know what it was. I was like, what the heck is that? But it grows really fast. But I just love the idea of community gardens too. I mean, there's so much space that could be used as community gardens.
Yeah, and one of our community gardens in the county most of it is county parkland that's been carved, a little here, a little there. One of it was a developer who was just sitting on land. He owned a 7-Eleven next door to it. And he was like, for the next 5 years, you guys can use it. And that's ideal situation, like where you can have something that's just, it's going to be something else. It's sitting unused. Why not take advantage of it? So that's ideal too. And I love that you brought up okra because that's one of my favorite things to grow. And I'm always pushing. I feel like I'm the okra pusher because I'm always like, it's so easy to grow. You just put a seed in the ground and it basically takes care of itself. And people are like, okra, blah. But I'm like, you haven't tasted fresh okra straight from the plant. That's the whole different thing. Yeah. And it's just, as you said, it's a beautiful plant. Like, even if you didn't even harvest anything, it's a hibiscus. It's just a gorgeous flower.
I've never seen anything so cool.
Mm-hmm. And it's so prolific. All you need are a few. And it's just like, it's so prolific that if you don't go out and pick it every day, then it starts to get woody and yucky. So it makes you go out to the garden frequently.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And so urban gardens, what got you started doing this, Kathy? You've been doing this for a little bit.
Mm-hmm. So I started I started the magazine. Our first issue was March 2005. And just so that everybody, all your listeners or watchers know, it's Washington, D.C., not Washington State. Because a lot of times they'll hear Washington Gardener and they'll just assume it's the left coast, but it's the right coast. So I started it because I was doing association communications work. I was working at different trade and professional associations, and I was director of communications at one, and I was looking around for another job, and I was like, I really need to just work for myself. Like, I didn't want to make a lateral move. I didn't want to go into association management, but I was doing magazines and newsletters and websites and other communication tools for them. And I was also at the same time had bought a small condo, and I was gardening like a crazy person. And I was getting my hands slapped by the condo board, the HOA, because I was gardening into the common areas. And that was not my place to be gardening. I was just like a little bit here, a little bit there. So I decided to buy this small house here, and a small house on a large pie shaped lot, just to have gardening space. And that's when I was like desperately looking around for gardening information for our local region. And I wasn't finding much. Like in the major national magazines, there's a lot about New England or California or the Chicago area. But I was like, we have a huge gardening region in the mid-Atlantic, all throughout Pennsylvania and New York State. New Jersey is known as the Garden State.
Right.
Doesn't have its own gardening magazine at the time or anything. So that's when I decided to launch my own garden magazine. And then the other things just grew out of that. The starting Seed Swap Day and hosting seed exchanges, speaking, doing the books and the podcast, that's all grown out of the magazine.
So that was the first thing, was the magazine. Wow. And so that in 2005.
Yeah. So coming up, I guess it's 18 years, and we're coming up. I have to decide. I'm going to make some decisions about the 20th anniversary. Like, I have to make some, like, do I want to, the magazine has evolved. It was print and bi-monthly, and now it's monthly, and it's digital publication. We're members of Green America, and so we're in the Green Business Network, and we have a Green Pledge. So when it was in print, it was forest certified paper and soy ink, and it had a water use pledge on it and everything. I do kind of miss having the paper version, but my messy office here, I still have stacks of back issues. So
your office doesn't miss it.
Yeah, my office and life don't miss having all that inventory. Having it online digitally is great.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I know my email inbox is very, very full because I have a hard time letting go of things. But at the same time, it's a good thing it's not like physical, because that would it would just be too much, too overwhelming.
Definitely overwhelming.
Yeah, but so all right, so magazine is gardening, and it's not just flowers; it's gardening in general, right? Because it's I always wondered that about, like, New Jersey, the Garden State. I've only been to New Jersey a couple of times, and all I see is pavement. Is it true that there's a lot of gardening area?
Yeah, I think everybody sees it from the Jersey Turnpike or I-95, and that's sad. And then I always hear this expression, people who take the train from DC to New York or commute, you're just looking at, ugly backyards, or, you're not looking at the good part of the state. You're looking at poor people's places because they're the ones who are living right next to that. And,
right. On the train line. To. Sure.
Yeah. Or forced to. But yeah, once you get away from that, it is a gorgeous state. And so is most of the Mid-Atlantic. And we got nice temperate, conditions, and we don't have, knock on wood, regular earthquakes or tornadoes
or hurricanes. Yeah.
So we're like a nice little sweet spot, and the ice age came down, but it didn't come down quite so far. It kind of just touched the edge of us. So that makes it, that's why we only have the low Appalachian Mountains. We don't have that giant crack down the center like the Grand Canyon or the tall mountains on one side that would stop the rain from coming to the other side.
Yeah, a little
So,
less extreme than a lot of the country.
yeah, that's what helps make it more of a moderate climate here. And then I was going to say that with gardening, everything can be recycled or be reused in some way. So obviously you want to be as green as possible and compost. And if you're a frugal gardener, you can even do more. Like there's so many ways to save money and your time and be like in a cooperative with other gardeners and sharing things. So I'm always exploring those avenues.
Well, I mean, you do seed saving and you do seed swaps, right?
Yep. So
That's very cool.
I started hosting an annual seed exchange in winter every year, and then I started National Seed Swap Day, and I dropped the national from it because I realized that was very limiting. I was like, why did I call it National Seed Swap Day? It's just Seed Swap Day. So because I started to get a lot of requests from seed swaps and exchanges in Canada and Mexico and the Caribbean and saying, can we join your listing? And I'm like, yeah, why did I put the word national? That was dumb. So yeah, so anybody, anywhere. It's always the last Saturday of January, but I always say celebrate it whatever day you want to celebrate it on. That's just, we just put a pin in the calendar, and that was the day we picked for that.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. We need to have more of that stuff, like just community sharing. And I mean, there's so many. I know I'm a seed hoarder. I'm a seed hoarder. I can't stop buying.
Aren't we all? Yeah.
and I know that I have too many, and I give things away, but I'm scared to give too many things away. Because I'm also a terrible gardener and things don't always come up, so I need to try 2 or 3 times sometimes. But but I love the idea, and I do try to save seeds. I save some seeds. But
well,
do you save like lettuce seeds and stuff like that? I don't know how to do that.
So that one's actually, I mentioned Santino before. Here he is. I knew he'd have to get in screen time too. So this is the Maine Coon, Santino. So he definitely was like, no, Kimba can't have it all the attention. So yes, as far as lettuce seed, actually that's one of the best ones to save, because lettuce seed have the lowest germination rate after their first year of storage. Like most seeds, I always tell people at the seed exchange, your seed pack can be 5 years old, 7 years old, whatever, still probably going to get a pretty good germination rate. Just plant extra. Like if you were going to plant 3 cucumber seeds on this mound, plant 6 or 9 and you're bound to get 3 of them, right? But with lettuce, it goes from a 90% to a 10% in 1 year. It has to be fresh. So that's one that if you're growing lettuce in the spring into summer, and then it starts to bolt and form flowers, let it go to seed, and then just snip those seed heads off as they're starting to dry, and just put them in a paper bag and hang them up like in a closet or your laundry room or wherever, garage, whatever dry place you have, and then collect those seeds, and then you can plant them that fall when you
snip the flowers off the top and let them dry
to form seed heads and starting to dry. That's when you're going to snip it off. So you have to let it go to bolt, and you have to leave that space for another like 4 to 6 weeks after you would have pulled out the lettuce at that point. But same thing with arugula, cilantro, all of those, the flowers are edible, the seeds are edible for most of those plants, and you want to save some for yourself to use. And then you could, once you're saving lettuce seeds, you're going to get thousands. So plenty to share. And because it has such a quick germination rate drop off, you want to share them as soon as possible, because they're just going to go to waste if you don't.
That's good to know. That must be why my lettuce hasn't come back.
Don't use old seed. Yeah, that one, like most of the seed packets have an expiration date because of agricultural laws and the government, and it'll just say packed for 2023. It doesn't say best if used by, it doesn't say must use by, it just says packed for that year. because they just want the consumer to have fresh seed that year. And they're kind of guaranteeing that they're not selling you old seed, but that has nothing to do with the seed's longevity itself.
Lettuce is special.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I will remember that. And I will be trying that soon.
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool. I'm thrilled to know that. And I do save my cilantro. I save my cilantro and I save my arugula because it makes those like pods, right? Arugula?
Yep. Yeah.
Makes the
And
pods.
so then you get also with the cilantro, of course, it's coriander. So that's a bonus right there. Edible and yummy. And a good spice to have on hand.
Twofer. Yes. Oh man, that's really cool. And that explains a lot because my lettuce has not been coming up the last couple of years. Excellent. Oh, I learned something good. That's great.
Yeah.
But so the gardening thing. Where did the gardening thing start for you, Kathy? Like, have you just always done that? Because you said in 2005 you were doing magazines and you noticed that there was no gardening magazine for the area.
I was gardening here at my house and just taking away all the turf grass and making it all gardening beds. And I was just gardening like crazy, once you catch the gardening bug. And so that's when I was like, we need a resource for this area. And that's when I started to put 2 and 2 together and started the magazine. But yeah, it was like, as a child playing in the garden, kind of osmosis. But it wasn't until I had my own place, the condo, that I was really gardening up a storm and then needing my own space. So I would say, that's the trajectory of a lot of gardeners, that, until you get your own place or own plot of land or your own pots to plant in, you're going to be like, oh, gardening looks fun or it looks interesting. But once you start, then you get addicted.
Yeah. Let's try this. So do you have any turf grass at your place?
I do not. It's all gone. So I've replaced it with ground covers, which is my new book, Groundcover Revolution, or with trees and shrubs. And that's why I have the community garden plot across the street, because after a certain number of years, they always say a garden is mature at 10 years. That's when your full sun just became full shade. So in order to grow vegetables and most herbs I have over there.
Oh, okay. All right. That's interesting. Yeah, so I've been working with, my husband is an arborist, and so we're like always sort of head to head. Like I want to plant more. I also have a jam business, so I want to plant more fruit stuff. And so I'm like, let's put some more blueberries in. He's like, well, where do we put them? Like, let's put them in the middle of the yard. He's like, well, that's going to make mowing really hard. I'm like, what if you don't have to mow all the yard?
Mm-hmm.
What if there are blueberries there and you don't have to mow there at all? So I'm just like, I'm working on that. And we can put some raspberries or, and we have some apple mint that I'm just like, let's just scatter it, If he does mow it, it'll smell like mint. It'll be amazing. And we have these huge mint patches. I'm like, just let it grow.
Yep, exactly.
But, and I've had at least two people come over this year. Like somebody's come over 3 times, and I'm like, just take mint, please. Like, people charge you for it, but there's no way I could use it.
No. And once you have mint, you have it. So the more for everybody else to share.
Yeah, it's cool. But I'm working toward that. And I mean, we're on an acre, so we've got a lot of planting to do, but we're working on it.
Mm-hmm.
But so tell me about ground cover. Like what's the big deal about ground cover?
So the main thing about the new book, Groundcover Revolution, is reducing or replacing turf grass lawns. So in an effort to be more sustainable, lower maintenance, lighter on the earth, beneficial for our wildlife and birds, because most ground covers have some flowering, which turf grass will not. Or if it does flower, it's probably gotten too tall for you to even maintain in any way. So just reducing or converting some of your landscape to ground covers is going to save you a lot of time and money, as well as being a more sustainable lifestyle.
That sounds like a win, 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 win.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's prettier. How's that? Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of great ground covers that are just much more gorgeous than a turf grass lawn could ever be.
Yeah. So what's considered a ground cover, Kathy?
So there's a huge wardrobe of ground covers. I narrowed it down in my book to my 40 top, it was really hard to do that. It's an internationally published book, so I tried to pick ones that were available most everywhere, ones that were workhorses that do well for a wide range of growing zones.
Sure.
So that limited me a lot. But so most people will think of the classic definition of ground cover, which is something that is steppable and super low. But I broadened that out to anything that just covers the surface thickly enough that it keeps down the weeds. So that's my definition of literally a ground cover is something that covers the surface enough that it could outcompete the weeds. And you're in a few years, once that ground cover is filled in, you're not having to weed and you're not having to mow. Maybe you're going to do a once a year cutback of this ground cover. Some of them, you could do it just for cosmetic reasons, because at the end of winter, maybe it's looking a little rough or shaggy, or brown tips, but also Mother Nature will do some of that cutback for you. So you might not even need to do that.
Right. So we have some, like, I don't know, weedy thing that I was just noticing in the last few days that it looks almost like lace.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very, very low, and it's covering our walkway. And I have no idea what it is, but I think it's a weed, but maybe it's a ground cover.
Yeah.
But it works fine.
Could be both. Yeah. And the weed is just a plant that's out of place. So if it's doing its job, then it's not a weed.
Yeah. But so I don't need you to list like the top 40, but could you name a couple just to give an example or two?
Sure. One of my favorites are the epimediums. So that's also known as barrenwort or fairy or bishop's hat. You'll also hear that. So it's kind of got like a teardrop shaped leaf, and it just crawls along the ground and makes thick patches. It's really good for dry shade, which I have a lot of under big oak trees here. And I'm not going to be out there irrigating or watering my garden all the time. So that's good for like eastern gardens or anywhere that's heavily wooded. That's a great ground cover choice. If you're in a more sunny climate, like in the desert Southwest, then sedums are a great choice. So the creeping sedum, not the tall sedum like sedum autumn joy, but the ground cover sedums. And kind of related to that is like creeping rosemary and creeping thyme. So those are two great herb plants that also make great understory plants in full sun, because they love great drainage, have a great scent to them too when you do step on them, and both flower prolifically for the pollinators. And you can snip off a few pieces and use them in the kitchen too. I mean, just because they're a miniature version doesn't mean you can't eat it as well.
I didn't realize there was a creeping rosemary. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a huge patch of creeping thyme, and it's beautiful.
Yeah. And sometimes you'll see it at a garden center or in a catalog. It'll say something like elfin thyme or elfin version or fairy garden. Like they'll sell it under the fairy garden category, or miniature, even like for miniature railroads, like because they're looking for tiny leaf stuff that just crawls along the ground. So sometimes you'll see it that way too.
Okay, cool. Oh, that's a good one. I mean, that's because it makes rosemary flowers.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. For us, the full size rosemary, the big rosemary shrub, we have a hardy version here in zone 7 called ARP, not like AARP. not the retired person, but take one of those A's off. So ARP was bred for the Mid-Atlantic region, and that one does flower sporadically throughout the growing season, and then when it goes into winter, it has little tiny purple flowers. But same thing with the creeping rosemary, it'll also flower for you.
Oh, interesting. Our sage, my sage was insane this year. I've never seen anything like it. I had like 6 plants, and it was like bushes, literally. And it flowered, and I've never seen sage flowers before. And they were beautiful also with the purple.
Oh, yeah.
But I've talked to a bunch of people who said that theirs also flowered, and I don't know if there's something to like this year or if it's, I don't know.
You just might have a longer growing season this year. Like your frost might be delayed. But yeah.
I don't know. We had a really late frost this spring, so I have no idea. It was a weird year. But anyway, that's great. I mean, that's really cool to know, to have a few examples. And I'm going to be looking into some creeping rosemary because I like the smell. That's great. And so it seems like it will solve a lot of problems.
Yeah, it's a good one for like under roses, or you were talking about growing raspberries. So under berry bushes, that would be a good partner for those situations. And then you wouldn't have to mulch, and it would serve the same thing as I call it a green living mulch. So it holds down the weeds, keeps the moistures in, insulates the root area. So all those same benefits, but without having to actually manually add wood chips or chopped up leaves or whatever you mulch with locally.
Yeah. All the things. Again, win, win, win. And things like rosemary, I would assume might keep pests away.
Yeah, there is some beneficials. It's going to attract pollinators to it. So usually all types of bees are attracted to both the creeping rosemary and creeping thyme. But deer don't love it. That's one good benefit of those, because of that herbal scent that it exudes. Deer are not going to usually come and step on it, but they might reach over for your berries still. So I can't say that it will be
no guarantees.
Yeah. If they're hungry enough, they're like, I can ignore the what they think is a very strong scent. Yeah.
Right. Oh, well, sure. I mean, we all do that, right?
Yeah.
If you want it bad enough, you'll take the risk. Cool. Let's see. What else am I missing? But so that I was telling Kathy before we started recording, I put that book in my Amazon cart because that is very interesting. And I'm working toward getting rid of turf grass and having more plants. So and it's just a cool thing to not have to worry about watering and have to worry about, and then to add more flowers for the beneficial insects and birds and stuff like that. Like, it just seems like everyone's going to be happy if we do that. So I think that's a great plan.
Yep. And I'm working with American Meadows. They're a seed and plant company to start annual Reduce Your Lawn Day. So the first one will be next May 20th. 2024 will be the first ever Reduce Your Lawn Day. So we're hoping that people everywhere will just evaluate, take a few minutes that day to think, what could be here instead of this section of lawn? Or do I really need this part that I haven't walked on in years except for to mow it? So
nice.
In that way, just thinking about how to reduce that impact.
Nice. That's awesome. You said it's called American Meadows?
Yeah, so Reduce Your Lawn Day will be posted. I think the website's done. It'll be posted in the next week or so. And then you could just Google Reduce Your Lawn Day or go to reduceyourlawnday.com or .org. And then It's being hosted on the American Meadows website.
Awesome. All right, cool. So, let's see. When I say the word sustainability, Kathy, what does that mean to you?
I would say it means a green lifestyle that you can live with, comfortably, and still have an abundance to share with others. Because it wouldn't be sustainable if you felt like, ooh, I'm always having to hoard or keep this to myself. So I would say it means abundance. That would be my biggest takeaway for sustainability, in that I have enough that I can share. And share with me in the future, but also share with others as well.
Ooh, I love that. And I was just thinking, I forgot to ask about the podcast. So tell us about the podcast.
Yeah, so it started it was a COVID pandemic baby, like so many other projects that people have started. So some people wrote books and some people baked bread or learned how to bake bread. And then I had this podcast on the shelf for a while, and I said, this is my opportunity to start the podcast with some extra time. So it's weekly. It's an interview format. It's called Garden DC, and it's free wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube as well. And I just interview an expert on one aspect of gardening or one plant family every week. So it could be all about growing figs is one recent episode. So everything you need to know to grow figs successfully, and points and tips and the best varieties. And then another week, it might be about an aspect of gardening like weeding or mulching or composting. So I just pick the experts' brains, and I've gotten some great guests. I've had Doug Tallamy talk about his book, Nature's Best Hope. I've had Margaret Roach, A Way to Garden, and we talked about weather and gardening, because when you get gardeners together, or anybody really, the weather is a hot topic.
For sure.
And how it goes into climate change as well.
For sure. Oh my gosh. Absolutely. And did you say that that's weekly?
Yes. So it comes out every Saturday. Yep. I do take a break over the holidays, the winter holidays. So that's what I'm evaluating right now, is like, where's my stopping point for 2023, and then restart in early January.
Right. Yeah. Oh my goodness. What are you going to do when you have time off? Yeah. Because right now you've got the magazine going, and you've got several gardening clubs. And so Kathy was saying that the podcast started because she was thinking about it. You had it like in your head for a couple of years, but you were supposed to speak at was it the Philadelphia?
Yeah, I was coming back from the Philadelphia Flower Show, and I had a bunch of other speaking gigs lined up and other events, and they all got canceled, the second of the pandemic shutdown, where they told us it was 2 weeks, right? And then it became 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And every time it got extended, more stuff got canceled or rebooked. So that gave me that time in that period to launch the podcast. And that's when I figured out, it only takes a couple hours a week to do a podcast episode. It's not, you could spend your entire week working on 1 hour, but you don't have to.
Right. Oh my gosh. That's amazing. So podcast, magazine, books, garden clubs, you're editing.
Yeah, I'm working on, so I do some freelance writing and editing for other plant groups as well. But yeah, they always say no rest for the wicked, right? So
no rest. I mean, they also say when you start to slow down, you really slow down, right? So maybe it's a gift.
Yep.
Okay. Is there anything else that I forgot or neglected to ask that you would like to get across?
I was trying to think of, if somebody is interested in being a garden writer or garden communicator, that there's a great association called GardenComm. It's Garden COMM. So that's for anybody who's like an influencer, blogger, YouTuber, they're a garden book writer, maybe they have a radio show or their podcast. So it's a group of us garden communicators, and we're just turning 75 years old this year. So, wow. And going strong. So that's a great group to join. And I would say also podcasting in general, whether it's a garden podcast or green podcast or anything, that if you're thinking of doing a podcast, I encourage you to do it, because there's, tons of podcasts out there, but there's not your voice, right? You're the only you. So there's a space for everybody.
True story. And the people you will meet, you can't even imagine. That's true story. 100%. Well, so Kathy, if somebody is like needing to follow you and find your books and find your magazine and find your podcast and find your blog and find, follow you and learn all about you, what is the best way to find you?
So on most platforms for social media, I'm at WDC Gardener. So that's like Twitter /X, Instagram, Pinterest, TikTok, although TikTok's kind of fallen to the wayside with me. I'll reach over. My publisher would probably love it if I would hold up some books. So that's the cover of Groundcover Revolution. That's hard to see with the pew, pew, pew. But
the filter.
The filter that makes it hard to see with the blur. But so they can just go to Amazon like you did, and Kathy with a K, JENTZ, that will come up. I also encourage people to buy the book off of bookshop.org to buy either book, because then they're supporting their local independent bookstores, or they can put it to their local library sometimes, depending on your local library. And I have another kitty messing with me back here. So they can also follow me at WashingtonGardener.blogspot.com is the blog. On YouTube, it's just Washington Gardener Magazine. Same on Facebook. And the podcast is Garden DC, all one word. And I came up with that title for the podcast because that's the hashtag I've been using for years, is hashtag Garden DC. So that's another way to just Google that hashtag or find that, and you can pretty much find me anywhere.
Because you do it all. Goodness gracious. Well, Kathy, oh my gosh, thank you so much. I'm so grateful to have spent this hour with you. You're a wealth of knowledge, and I just feel so lucky to have gotten to hang out with you.
Well, it was nice talking to you. It was fun. And I was like, oh, I can relax and take a little trip down memory lane. So that's always good. And it makes you, when people are asking you questions, because I'm usually the interviewer, being the interviewee makes you like actually sit down and pause and think about things.
Yeah. Well, it kind of takes the heat off a little bit, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit easier to be on that side.
Well,
sometimes. I mean, it depends on the questions, right?
Exactly. I was going to say, it depends. Sometimes I feel like when I'm talking to some of my interviewees, they're very nervous about talking, but they're just, they would want to get it right.
Yeah. Yeah, true. Yeah. Well, I've really enjoyed this, and I can't wait to share this message. So I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's see. Stop recording. I just want to take a moment and thank my guest again for speaking with me and sharing such great information. I also need to thank Buzzsprout for hosting this podcast, for Jane Bolduck and her amazing music genius, for Becca Coffron and her beautiful artwork. And I'd like to thank you for listening. Please check out the show notes. I'm going to have links posted in there if you would like to follow this guest and learn more about them. Thank you again. We'll talk to you soon.
There'll come a day, my mama told me, when I to have and hold me, a heart that's strong and so sincere. Just tell me, how do I get there from here? Oh, tell me, how do I get there from here? 'Cause here and now I'm so far down that mercy's bound to find me. We'll find a way to soothe the sickness. We'll heal the hate with sweet forgiveness. Wages of war will disappear. Just tell me, how do I get there from here? I wonder, how do I get there from here? Yeah, 'cause here now I'm so far down that mercy's bound to find me. When that state of grace has finally found me, well, there'll be music, ooh, and good friends around me, yeah, yeah. And I'll just smile through happy tears and wonder